Well, fair warning if you've started following along this Biochar Humble Beginnings. Take it what you get it. I'm not cleaning up for the camera. Ain't much to clean up anyway. Filthy out here in June. Finally got the homemade rocket stove well on its way, I hope. So this is a work in progress. First we encountered, if you've watched the other video when we began to tear this old feed bin apart, the screws and the bolts were rusted on, and I soaked them overnight with a penetrating oil, and that freed up about 98% of them, so we only had to pop off 2 or 3. So that was a win. Went a little bit quicker. And went to set it in place down here in a pit. I dug a little pit. Oh, it's about 3 inches just to kind of get below the main ground. And the barrels were too tall for the sides of this, so all 4 wouldn't fit in. In fact, even 2 wouldn't fit in, because we have to have the taper on the wannabe smokestack of sorts, and just wasn't going to work. So thank goodness for crazy resources, and over time I had a big old pile of bricks out in the pasture and a few cinder blocks. In fact, I was short 1 cinder block, and lo and behold, I was clearing that compost fence line yesterday, and the one spot of fence line I picked, there was a cinder block in the woods, so that made the 4th one. So we have a kind of a kiln effect going. I've built it up the height of a cinder block on the bottom. The bricks that are around it serve no purpose structurally, mainly just to help restrict airflow, because we do want some oxygen to get in there to the fuel fire, but not so much that it burns so quick, because it's got to take its time and get all of our biochar biomass paralysized, I guess. It's through a process where it sucks all the oxygen and gases out of it. But we'll have plenty of, I've got a brick kind of modulator there on the holes of the cinder block, but we should have good airflow for the fuel fire. I elected to go ahead and just do 3. I can squeeze 4 in there, but it really doesn't give me a whole lot of room for the fuel fire. So this is our first round at this, so I'm going to err on the side of caution, just do 3 this round, see how that comes out, and then we may, I can get 4 in there, just got to do a little bit of readjustment. But we've got her built, so now all that's left to do is we've got all these reclaimed furniture scrap starts here. All of it's unpainted, no nails in it. You don't want to use any painted wood for this process, but we'll stuff these barrels full of all this as tight as we can get it in the barrel, and then we'll take our lids and bands and seal the top of the barrel. We have holes in the bottom for the gas to escape, but we want the top sealed, and then we'll fill in all the crevices of this, we'll call it a rocket stove, with fuel. You know, pine limbs, leaves, twigs, just stuff it full. And our smaller limbs and things we'll put here at the top. We'll put our top on it and light the fire from the top. I actually may light the fire before I put the top on it and get it going good on the top. It's a little different than normal fires where you start it at the bottom, because it's a little different process. That's what makes it so tricky. But you want to start the fire on the top, and as it catches hold, it'll start moving down, and we'll put that on to retain the heat in the whole chamber. As it heats up, it will deprive the furniture stock or wood stock in these barrels from oxygen, but not heat. So heat will begin to charcoalize the wood and pull all the gases out of it, which will escape out of the bottom and then come up through the sides and burn off with the fire that's going on the outside of the barrel. So over a period of about 3 or 4 hours, the gases in all the woods, the water and oxygen and all that will leave the wood in the barrel. And when it burns out, then the fuel fire around the barrels will continue to burn until it's spent all of its fuel. At that time, you can let her cool off, open up the top of your barrel, and should have a barrel full of high quality biochar with lots of pores and absolutely nothing left of the wood that it was. It's just charcoal, and ready to begin the next process, which is crushing it and inoculating it. But we'll get into that later. Right now, it's just a test to see if this homemade rocket stove will work, and kind of thinking it will. I don't have high hopes, but I do have faith. There's a difference there. So got faith that we'll get it right, but not head in the clouds type hopes. I just think it's going to be perfect first round. But got to start somewhere. So that's where we're starting. Got it done, and we're going to start filling everything up and maybe set a fire this evening. We'll see. A little bit cold out here. Okay, well, now we can say I've got some blood, sweat, and tears. Well, no, I ain't cried yet, I don't think, but got a little blood on my finger. Seems breaking this stuff up is a little hazardous to your fingers. I'm sure my wildflower get on me and say, "Where are your gloves?" Oops. Now she's got it on video. Anyway, so we've got the 2 barrels already sealed. They look like that. I did throw a few regular branches and things in there. Of course, when I've got an endless supply, we got one little truckload of furniture scraps this morning, and look, hadn't even made a dent in it. And they've got a mountain of it. And I saw a big old sawdust pile beside that goes about 40 foot high and about 100 foot deep of the years of them doing, into sawdust just to manage it, and I understand that. But this will be so much more of a positive impact on the environment all the way around, and benefit the soil all the way. So that's good. So we'll have plenty of fuel to get this biochar done. So I'm going to seal up this last barrel and then begin to fill up I've got a little bit of fuel stock ready to go, but fill up all these nooks and crannies with some limbs and maybe some of the boards that we're not going to use for biochar. Hang on a second. All right, hang on a second. Sometimes I got to talk to myself. And bro, you lost them. You're talking about all this biochar, and you just said that the caption, I already know because I've done the research, but you just told them that 1 ton of this biochar stuff in this homemade rocket stove thing you're attempting to do, turning wood products into carbon or charcoal, will offset 3 tons of bad carbon. They have no idea what you're talking about. I kind of can read a room, and folks are kind of scratching their head right now. So you're going to have to do better than that. I found a video that might explain it in its simplest form. And, well, I could try, but take a look.
Soil is a living thing. A teaspoon of healthy soil has more living organisms in it than all the people on the planet. Plants use living soil to stay healthy and strong, relying on it to deliver water, oxygen, and nutrients, to communicate and share resources through networks of microbes. In a natural environment, soil quality is naturally brilliant, so everything works as it should. But in towns and cities, golf courses, football pitches, and even gardens and allotments, the soil is much lower quality than in woodlands. In some cases, where fungicides and pesticides have been overused, soil becomes barren, much to the detriment of the grass, flowers, trees, and crops we rely on. But there's an easy solution to permanently improve soil quality in all environments. Biochar. Biochar is a very porous and high-carbon form of charcoal that has 3 beneficial effects on soil. Physical. Biochar's microscopic honeycomb structure improves the aeration, water-holding capacity, and nutrient retention of soil and stops it getting compacted, meaning all the essentials that plant roots need are readily available and easily accessible. Biological. This structure also provides the perfect housing for beneficial microbiology, which defends roots and fights off pests. Chemical. Biochar is very high in carbon, which is good for a process called cation exchange, which essentially means more nutrients are retained in the soil and available for plant roots. Because of biochar's purity, it doesn't degrade, so it is a permanent improvement to your soil. And because it's so high in carbon, it's preventing carbon dioxide from being released into the atmosphere. 1 ton of carbon locked away in biochar is equivalent to 3 tons of carbon dioxide permanently removed from the atmosphere. So what is biochar? Carbon gold.
See if we can get this baby to work. Right, we'll put the lid on. Now for the top to light it, saw it done with a butane torch. I don't have one of those, don't need one. I have got a endless supply. Believe me, I know as a kid growing up, I had to rake them every day, of magnolia leaves up here in the front yard. And boy, if that ain't the best tinder box you can get. So I'll spread those across the top of that, light it, and it's gone. It'll go. If that fails, I've got about 5 of those big logs, and some of y'all might know what that is. That's lighter pine. So I can split off a little bit of that and put that on top. Anyway, so we'll get the fire started. We'll just see if it truly makes this biochar in these barrels like we anticipate that it's going to do. All right, so I'm going to get off here, seal up these barrels, get it all ready to light, and then I guess we'll check back in a minute. Okay, I've got them all full now. I'm sealing them up, and I'm going to begin to get my fuel fire fuel ready. Okay, we're making progress. I'm satisfied with the amount of wood I have as fuel around those 3 barrels. And just a quick recap, I've got 3 55-gallon barrels with holes punched out in the bottom. Those are 1/2-inch holes. That allows the gas and the oxygen and the moisture from the wood that I have stuffed inside these barrels to escape, and then they turn to charcoal. I do have a couple of concerns on this DIY rocket stove. First, do I have enough wood? And have I put it around all the crevices like it needs to be? I feel like that I have. Combined with the physics of a closed heating structure, I think we'll be okay. Secondly, the important thing is that these barrels holding the potential biochar that you're making, the biochar stock we'll call it, is fairly tight so that oxygen doesn't get in there. If it does, then they're just going to burn and turn to ash, which is what we're used to. We need a kind of an oxygen-free environment. That's why the holes are on the bottom, set flush to the ground. If you prop them up, they're going to get too much oxygen and just turn to ash. So we'll see. I don't have them really sealed because the rings that I have require a bolt, which I don't have. But the lids went on fairly tight. I felt good about how they felt, and I did put the ring on it. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Either A, we'll have our first load of biochar, or B, we'll have a first lesson in how not to do it. So either way, we'll be productive. I am going to go get a load of, a bucket full of magnolia leaves and dump it on top, get my fire started, then set our little chimney effect on top. It's just an inverted old feeder, but and we'll see what happens. It'll be hours before we know. It may be tomorrow before we know, but we're on the journey. We got the first load ready to go. Okay, so we've got our barrels with the biochar stock from the furniture leavings loaded, sealed hopefully enough, and this should make a very good, I may have a big old fire here. This may be too much fire, but we'll see. We've got magnolia leaves, which if you've not burned them before, they're excellent starting material. If this doesn't catch the fire up, then we'll use some pine kindling, but I think this will do nicely. I've got wood fuel stuffed all the way around the barrels. We're going to get the fire started. It's going to flare up a little bit, hopefully, and then as it starts dying down to a manageable level, probably about here, we'll put the rocket top on and see how this works. So here we go. All right, so we'll see if this will catch it up. We're doing a little bit different. The way these rocket stoves work, you started at the top or the bottom. We do have a sufficient airflow of oxygen through the bottom, through the cinder block holes, and just the porous nature of the bricks. And we'll let it burn down a little bit. Some of it's going to fall off, but we've got a safe fire pit going on. And we'll check back in when we put the top on. Ready? Up high. Go. We can kick it. Yeah, look.
It's still sitting on this barrel top.
It'll fall down.
I don't think it's touching it now, so.
It's just the wood.
Yeah. They'll fall down with time.
Well, we've got our top on, first learning curve. I had too much wood on top, so that's what's holding it up. It's not hitting the barrels, but we'll let it burn down just a little bit and we'll be able to seat it a little bit better. It's okay that the air is getting in there, to be honest with you. I'd like it a little bit tighter, but it's the same principle, so hopefully without having a big stack on it, it'll be enough of an oxygen restriction to keep the fire hot like we want it for the biochar. We'll find out, maybe a few hours, but we'll take a look. Okay, so we're about 10 minutes into our first burn, and noticing some things that I don't necessarily care for with the design as far as what we need to be happening. We might still have a successful burn. I overstuffed the top. That's one thing. Now this galvanized probably won't hold up for numerous burns because of the thinness of the metal, but of course it bows, and with the heat it's going to change its conformity. So we're getting a little bit too much oxygen in the stove itself, but I think we've got enough heat to do the job, hopefully. We'll see. So if I had to, I will do it again, but the next time, I think instead what I'll do is go ahead and keep the top off, stuff all the barrels around the barrels like they should be with fuel, but not build my cone up too high. Just leave it flat on top of the barrels. Go ahead and set before the fire started, while it's cool, set the cone on top, make sure it's sealed correctly all the way around, and then that hole is big enough to stuff the remainder that I need to make that riser fire to get it started. So learning, a little bit too much white smoke. It's not burning as clean as it needs to, but that's because of the big gap and letting so much oxygen in over here. Too late to correct it. That galvanized is hot, so we'll just let it take its course and see if we have any at all later this evening. But first burn underway. It's hot enough out here. I'm going to let it do its thing. I can't help it by watching. There's no boiled water to watch. All right, so we'll check back in later. Well, she's burning, but I've learned a few things I should have done different. I'm not liking how much flame and smoke is coming out, but I overfilled the top of it a little bit too much. But overall, it looks fairly good. Again, we're learning, so we'll see. We might have a successful biochar turnout. We may not, but I know how to fix it next time. That's the main thing. So nothing to do now but let her burn out. We'll see.